3 a.m., security camera footage, my HOA president, neighbor, sneaking across my driveway with bolt cutters. She's stealing my EV charging cable, the same woman who drives an $80,000 Tesla, the same woman who's been harassing me for months about my unsightly electrical equipment, the same woman who's about to discover that this blue-collar electrician knows a thing or two about setting traps. I'm watching her on my phone screen right now, cutting through $300 worth of copper wire. The metallic smell still hangs in the morning air. The crunch of gravel under my boots sounds different when you're walking toward evidence of a felony. And that distant hum? That's her Tesla charging in her garage with my stolen cable. Here's what she didn't know. I've been documenting everything, every harassment, every illegal move, every federal crime she's about to commit. This isn't about a cable anymore. This is about justice. And she just handed me the key to destroy her entire criminal empire. What would you do if your neighbor literally stole the electricity right out of your driveway? Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether your HOA is run by reasonable people or absolute tyrants. My name's Marcus, and 6 months ago I thought I'd found my slice of the American dream. After my divorce went through, let's just say my ex-wife kept the house and I kept the debt. I needed a fresh start, somewhere my 16-year-old daughter Zoe could visit on weekends without being embarrassed by her old man's living situation. Somewhere with a garage big enough for my workshop, because when you're rebuilding your life, you need space to rebuild everything else too. Willowbrook Estates looked perfect on paper. Built in the 90s when people still believed HOAs were about maintaining standards instead of feeding power trips. The smell of fresh-cut grass and reasonable neighbors filled the air during my first walkthrough. I bought a modest 3-bedroom house specifically for that 2-car garage. See, I'm an electrical contractor. Been crawling through attics and rewiring houses for 22 years. After the layoffs at my previous company, I went independent. That garage workshop wasn't just my workspace. It was my economic lifeline. I drive a 2019 Nissan Leaf. Not exactly a chick magnet, but it gets the job done. After watching gas prices eat my lunch money for years, going electric made financial sense. Plus, I could install my own level 2 charging station. Legally permitted, properly inspected, everything by the book. Zoe even helped me test the circuits, teaching her some real-world electrical skills they don't cover in high school physics. The sweet taste of father-daughter bonding over voltage meters, you know? Enter Brenda Fitzpatrick. Real estate agent, HOA president, and owner of the biggest house on the corner lot. A sprawling colonial that probably has more square footage than my last 3 apartments combined. Brenda drives that Tesla Model S I mentioned, the kind that whispers, "I'm environmentally conscious," while screaming, "I'm better than you," at 80,000 decibels. She patrols the neighborhood like she's protecting Fort Knox, except instead of gold, she's guarding property values from the terrible threat of working-class people. The harassment started 3 months after I moved in. First violation notice, my unsightly electrical equipment. I proved my charging station was code compliant and pre-approved by the city. Strike 1 for Princess Brenda. Then she had my work van ticketed for commercial vehicle parking, even though it was sitting in my own driveway. The rough texture of citation papers became way too familiar between my fingers as I fought ticket after ticket. Here's where it gets rich, and I mean that literally. Brenda publicly opposed infrastructure eyesores at HOA meetings while driving the most expensive electric car on the market. She wanted the environmental status symbol without the infrastructure to support it. It's like complaining about gas stations while driving a Ferrari. The cognitive dissonance was so thick you could cut it with bolt cutters, which, spoiler alert, she definitely owned. See, I represented everything Brenda wanted to ethnically cleanse from Willowbrook Estates. Blue-collar guy in work boots instead of golf shoes. Someone who fixed things instead of just buying new ones. Someone who actually worked for a living instead of making money off other people's desperation. She took one look at my used Leaf and my honest work van and decided I was patient zero in the property value plague. The night she stole my cable, I watched it all unfold on my security system. She checked my windows first, professional burglar technique really. Then she walked to my charging outlet with those bolt cutters like she was trimming her roses. Cut the cable close to the outlet, taking the entire 25-foot cord. The woman had the audacity to walk directly to her garage with my cable. Zero attempt to hide the evidence. That's when it hit me. Brenda thought blue-collar meant stupid. She thought divorced meant desperate. She thought isolated meant defenseless. Well, this electrician was about to teach her that the guy who knows how to wire an entire house definitely knows how to wire a trap. And honey, I'd been saving up some serious voltage just for her. The next morning, I knocked on Brenda's door at 7 a.m. sharp. Nothing says neighborly chat like confronting a thief before her morning latte. She answered wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my truck payment, clutching a mug that read "World's Best Realtor." The rich aroma of expensive coffee wafted out, the kind that comes from beans handpicked by monks or whatever justifies $20 a pound. "Marcus," she said my name like it was a communicable disease. "Morning, Brenda. Nice cable you've got there." Her perfectly Botoxed forehead attempted to furrow. I'm sorry?" I held up my phone, security footage queued up. 3 a.m. Bolt cutters. My driveway. Ring any bells? She watched herself commit grand theft, then smiled that practiced realtor smile, the one that says trust me while picking your pocket. Oh, that. I was conducting a safety inspection. A safety inspection. With bolt cutters. At 3 a.m. As HOA president, I have a duty to investigate potential electrical hazards. The woman had more brass than a marching band. "So you inspected my cable by cutting it into pieces." I was collecting evidence of code violations. Evidence that's now plugged into your Tesla? I have no idea what you're talking about. Here's the thing about dealing with sociopaths. They'll gaslight you while standing in the flames. But I wasn't just some pushover neighbor anymore. I was a guy with professional-grade security cameras and 22 years of dealing with code enforcement bullshit. That afternoon, I marched into the police station with my evidence folder. The desk sergeant perked up when I mentioned the dollar amount. 300? That's felony territory, buddy. Music to my ears. But when Detective Reynolds showed up, I caught something interesting. Same angular jaw as Brenda, same condescending smirk. "Mr. Marcus," he said, mangling my name like it was optional. "Neighbor disputes can get messy. You sure you want to escalate this?" "Detective, if someone cut the cables on your police car, would that be escalation or investigation?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His jaw tightened like I'd just insulted his mother. "That's completely different." "Look, maybe you folks can work this out without involving the courts." And there it was. Corruption, served with a side of family loyalty. But Detective Reynolds made one crucial mistake. He assumed I was just some blue-collar schmuck who'd roll over for authority. While he was stonewalling my theft report, I was already 3 steps ahead. See, during my months of harassment documentation, I'd noticed something peculiar. Late-night drives past the community center revealed Brenda's Tesla plugged into their external outlet. Every single night. The community center is taxpayer-funded, municipal property, which makes unauthorized electrical usage theft of public utilities a whole different flavor of felony. I started my surveillance routine, drove by at midnight, took time-stamped photos. The soft click of my camera shutter became a nightly soundtrack. Week after week, there was Princess Tesla, sucking juice from the public teat. But Brenda wasn't content with just blocking my police report. 3 days later, violation notices appeared on doors throughout the neighborhood, like a plague of bureaucratic locusts. The Patels got cited for non-conforming religious displays. Prayer flags in their own backyard. Jessica, across the street, got dinged for excessive children's recreational materials visible from public areas. Translation: her kid's sidewalk chalk. The message was crystal clear: cross Brenda and she'll carpet bomb your entire block. That evening, I started knocking on doors. The stories I collected made my stomach turn. Mrs. Patel whispered about threats over cooking odors that might affect property values. Jessica showed me a shoebox full of violation notices. Everything from holiday decorations exceeding approved color palette to children's outdoor play equipment not matching neighborhood aesthetic standards. Every victim shared common threads. Not white, not wealthy, not willing to grovel. That's when the light bulb went off, pun intended. This wasn't random harassment. This was systematic discrimination with a paper trail longer than Brenda's list of professional ethics violations. I called my ex-wife Sarah that night. Whatever our marital issues were, she'd always been the strategic thinker. "Marcus," she said after hearing my recap, "you're thinking like a victim. Think like an electrician." What's that supposed to mean? When you troubleshoot a circuit, what's the first thing you do? Follow the power source. Exactly. Stop chasing symptoms and find the main breaker. She was absolutely right. Brenda wasn't just a cable thief, she was running a systematic operation. And systematic operations leave systematic evidence. Time to trace this circuit back to its source. Following the power source led me down a rabbit hole that would make Alice dizzy. Brenda had been busier than a one-legged cat in a sandbox, filing 17 separate code violation reports against me in 1 month. The musty smell of bureaucratic paperwork filled my nostrils as I dug through city records, each bogus complaint more creative than the last. Operating unlicensed electrical business, creating neighborhood disturbance through antagonistic behavior. My personal favorite, potential electromagnetic interference with neighborhood Wi-Fi networks. Apparently, my legally installed charging station was now a cyber weapon. But here's where Lady Luck decided to throw me a bone. The city inspector assigned to investigate these fantasy violations was Tom Valdez, a guy I'd worked with on 3 commercial projects. Tom's that rare government employee who actually gives a damn about facts over politics. "Marcus," he said when I called, "I've been waiting for you to reach out. Your neighbor's crazier than a soup sandwich." We met at Mel's Diner on 5th Street. The clatter of silverware against thick ceramic plates provided perfect cover for what felt like a Cold War intelligence briefing. Tom slid a manila folder across the worn Formica table, like he was passing state secrets. "Everything Princess Brenda's filed in 6 months," he said, stirring sugar into coffee that could strip paint. "Take a look at the pattern." I opened the folder and my jaw hit the floor harder than a dropped wrench. Page after page of complaints, all targeting the same demographic, the Patels for unpermitted religious structures, prayer flags in their own backyard. Jessica got dinged for operating unlicensed childcare facility because her kids played outside. Mr. Washington, the black veteran down the street, was cited for automotive repair business because he changed his own oil. 89% of her complaints target non-white residents, Tom said. "I've been building a federal discrimination case, but I needed someone with legal standing who wouldn't just roll over and move away." That's when my second light bulb exploded, brighter than a 4th of July finale. Tom had been playing the long game, waiting for the right victim to make his case bulletproof. "But wait, there's more," Tom grinned like a late-night infomercial host. "I pulled electrical permits for every house in Willowbrook Estates. Guess whose $80,000 Tesla charger was never approved by the city?" The irony was so thick you could cut it with bolt cutters. Our HOA president had been harassing me for having properly permitted equipment while running an illegal installation that violated every code in the book. While Tom was dropping legal bombshells, I shared my midnight surveillance photos of Brenda's utility theft. His eyes lit up like a slot machine jackpot. "Public utilities fraud," he whispered. "That's FBI territory. White-collar crime division eats this stuff for breakfast." The beautiful thing about systematic criminals? They never stop at just one crime. Brenda was running a discrimination campaign while committing federal theft, filing false reports, and operating illegal equipment. She'd basically created a crime buffet. That evening, I organized a neighborhood potluck at the community center. Amazing how mentioning free food and the chance to share Brenda stories brought people out of hiding. The warm aroma of homemade casseroles mixed with the electric anticipation of people finally ready to fight back. Mrs. Chen showed up with her own evidence folder. Turns out the retired federal prosecutor had been conducting her own investigation, building a legal case from the other direction. "Marcus," she said, spreading documents across a folding table, "what you've stumbled into is a textbook civil rights conspiracy. Pattern discrimination, abuse of authority, mail fraud, public corruption. In terms my ex-wife would understand. Brenda's looking at 25 to life if we prosecute this properly." The room went dead silent except for the soft buzz of fluorescent lights and someone's sharp intake of breath. 25 years. For harassing neighbors and stealing electricity. But Mrs. Chen wasn't done dropping nuclear weapons disguised as legal advice. She'd analyzed HOA voting records dating back 5 years. Voter turnout had collapsed from 68% to 12% during Brenda's reign of terror. She's been systematically suppressing Democratic participation by driving away opposition voters, Mrs. Chen explained. That's federal election interference on top of everything else. Here's the mini twist that made my electrician heart sing. While we were building our federal case, Brenda was making her biggest mistake yet. That afternoon, she'd called a city inspector to file yet another false report about my dangerous electrical modifications. The inspector who showed up, Tom Valdez, who documented everything, who now had Brenda on record filing a false report to a government official while he was wearing a wire. She just handed us conspiracy charges with a bow on top, Tom grinned. Game, set, and match. We weren't just fighting back anymore. We were building a federal case that would make headlines. 2 weeks into our federal evidence-gathering operation, Brenda's mask finally slipped completely off. I'm talking full psychotic break, burn the village to save it desperation. The acrid smell of panic was practically radiating from her corner mansion as she launched a terror campaign that would make dictators proud. First target, the Rodriguez family. Maria had been quietly supporting our neighborhood resistance, so Brenda manufactured a rental crisis out of thin air. Suddenly their lease had clerical errors requiring immediate termination. The rough texture of hastily printed eviction papers was still warm when Maria knocked on my door, tears streaming down her face. 3 days, Maria whispered, clutching her 2 kids like life preservers. She says we have to be gone by Friday or she'll call the police. Mrs. Chen examined the eviction notice and started cackling like a witch who'd just discovered fire insurance fraud. This document is more fictional than Harry Potter. She's backdating signatures and citing lease violations that don't exist in any known universe. But Princess Brenda was just getting warmed up. Next, she filed a property lien against Mrs. Chen's house for unpaid HOA fines that existed only in Brenda's increasingly delusional mind. A 30-year federal prosecutor was suddenly facing foreclosure over imaginary debt. The cruelest blow came Tuesday morning. Brenda called Immigration and Customs Enforcement, reporting the Patels as suspicious foreign nationals operating without proper documentation. The sound of Mr. Patel's panicked phone calls echoed through my kitchen window as he desperately contacted their immigration attorney. 20 years of legal residency, a house they owned outright, and suddenly they're suspicious? She's trying to ethnically cleanse the entire neighborhood, I told Tom during our daily briefing. This isn't harassment. It's domestic terrorism with a real estate license. But here's where Brenda's desperation became our greatest asset. Every fraudulent document, every false report, every illegal threat was creating an evidence trail so clear that even a blind prosecutor could follow it. She was essentially live tweeting her own federal crimes. That's when Jake Morrison from the county newspaper started sniffing around. I'd been feeding him strategic leaks for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash the full story. When he called about the ICE report, I knew it was showtime. "Marcus," Jake said, his voice vibrating with reporter bloodlust, "this story keeps getting bigger. Mind if I really dig into this woman's background? Jake, when you start excavating Brenda's finances, you're going to need a backhoe." See, while our HOA dictator was busy committing federal crimes in broad daylight, Mrs. Chen had been following money trails like a financial bloodhound. What she discovered made Enron look like a lemonade stand operation. Property records revealed a breathtaking pattern of predatory profiteering. Every family Brenda harassed into selling had accepted below-market offers, every single one. And guess who materialized with cash purchases through cleverly named shell companies? Willowbrook Properties, LLC, Suburban Renewal Holdings, Community Enhancement Ventures, all tracing back to our friendly neighborhood sociopath. The smooth surface of justice felt perfect under my fingertips as I handed Jake 3 years of property transfer records. She's not just racist, Jake. She's running an ethnic cleansing operation for profit. Jake's investigation uncovered the staggering scope of Brenda's criminal enterprise. 47 families driven out over 3 years. Average profit per property flip, $85,000, 0 cents. Total community theft, $3,800,000, 0 cents. Stolen from our neighbors' equity and dreams. But the nuclear weapon in our evidence arsenal came from the most unlikely source imaginable. Jessica's 8-year-old daughter Emma had been secretly recording Brenda's public rants, thinking the angry lady was hilarious entertainment. Kids and their phones, right? Except Emma's accidental surveillance had captured something extraordinary. Brenda bragging to another real estate agent about her business model. "You overwhelm them with violations until they break," Brenda's voice crackled through Jessica's phone speaker as we gathered in my living room. "File enough complaints, they eventually give up and sell cheap. Then you renovate, market to the right demographic, and triple your investment. It's perfectly legal if you're just maintaining community standards. The room fell dead silent except for the soft whir of my backup recording device capturing every incriminating word. An 8-year-old with an iPhone had just delivered a full confession to federal conspiracy charges. Jake's editor immediately approved a 3-part nuclear exposé. When do we publish? I looked around at faces that had been terrorized for years. Maria clutching her fraudulent eviction, the Patels holding their lawyer's card, Mrs. Chen reviewing documents that could steal her home. Next week, I smiled, right before the HOA election meeting. Brenda thought she was fighting random neighbors. She had no idea she was about to face federal prosecutors, investigative journalists, and a community that had evolved from victims into predators. Time to hunt the hunter. Mrs. Chen called me at dawn with the kind of voice that makes your coffee go cold. Marcus, my office, now. Bring your security footage and prepare to have your mind blown. I found her surrounded by legal documents spread across every surface like evidence from a serial killer investigation. The sharp smell of permanent marker hung in the air from color-coded highlighting, and her normally pristine office looked like a hurricane had hit a law library. 47 years of prosecuting federal crimes, she said without looking up, and I've never seen anything this beautifully criminal. She pointed to a clause buried on page 47 of the original HOA charter, the kind of legal fine print that would cure insomnia. Right of first refusal on all property sales within Willowbrook Estates. English, please. The original developer kept the right to match any house sale offer, but that right transferred to whoever controls the development's management company. Her finger traced down to another highlighted section. Management company controlled by Willowbrook Properties, LLC. The blood drained from my face faster than water through a broken pipe. Brenda's shell company. Every HOA decision she's made for 3 years has directly benefited her financially. Every violation notice sent while hiding this interest is federal mail fraud. Every harassment campaign designed to force sales is wire fraud conspiracy. Mrs. Chen pulled out bank records that looked like they'd been printed in hell. The soft rustle of pages turning was the only sound as she walked me through 3 years of systematic theft. She doesn't just profit from the property flips, Marcus. She gets first right of refusal at below-market prices, then flips them through her other shell companies. It's a closed-loop money laundering operation. I counted the transactions with shaking hands. 47 families driven out, 47 below-market sales, 47 times Brenda legally stole from our neighbors while hiding behind HOA authority. How much? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Mrs. Chen's calculator clicked like a time bomb. Conservative estimate, $4.2 million stolen from this community over 3 years. The room started spinning. We'd gone from a stolen charging cable to uncovering what federal prosecutors would classify as organized racketeering, RICO territory, the kind of case that makes headlines and destroys generations. But Mrs. Chen wasn't finished delivering nuclear weapons disguised as legal documents. There's something else, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The original development required ongoing environmental monitoring funded by resident fees. $2.3 million collected over 6 years. Let me guess, diverted to Willowbrook Properties, LLC. 0 environmental testing conducted if there's industrial contamination spreading through our groundwater. She didn't need to finish. Environmental crimes carry unlimited federal liability. Cleanup costs, property damage, health impacts. We were potentially looking at a $100 million Superfund site with Brenda as the responsible party. The beautiful irony hit me like voltage through wet copper. Brenda had been so focused on stealing from individual families that she'd accidentally created a federal case that could bankrupt her into the Stone Age. Mrs. Chen leaned back in her chair, surveying the legal carnage spread across her office. Marcus, we started investigating a neighborhood bully and uncovered a criminal enterprise that could qualify for federal death penalty charges. I looked at the evidence. 47 families destroyed, millions stolen, environmental crimes that could poison our entire community. The texture of justice felt different now. Heavier, more permanent. What's our next move? Mrs. Chen smiled like a prosecutor who'd just been handed a confession. We call the FBI. because Brenda Fitzpatrick isn't just going to prison, she's about to become a federal case study in how greed destroys everything it touches. The power hadn't just shifted, it had exploded. Mrs. Chen transformed her home office into what I can only describe as federal crime headquarters meets grandma's craft room. The rich aroma of her legendary Korean coffee mixed with the sharp smell of fresh printer ink as she cranked out legal documents like a woman possessed. By noon, she'd filed formal complaints with more government agencies than I knew existed. "Here's the beautiful thing about systematic criminals," she said, highlighting passages with the precision of a surgeon. "They create systematic evidence. Every crime Brenda committed left a paper trail that leads straight to federal prison." Tom Valdez arrived with his city inspector credentials and a shit-eating grin that stretched from ear to ear. "Marcus, my friend, you're about to become the most satisfied customer in municipal history." He spread out 3 years of violation reports like a poker player revealing a royal flush. The soft rustle of papers was music to my electrician ears. Every bogus complaint, documented, cataloged, and ready for prosecution. "She filed 43 false reports against protected residents," Tom continued. "0 reports about actual violations and properties she was flipping. Even a blind prosecutor could win this case." Jake Morrison showed up with enough recording equipment to film a movie. "This story's gone viral before I've even published it," he said, adjusting his camera angles. 3 networks want exclusive interviews, and my editor's talking Pulitzer Prize. But the real strategic mastermind was Zoe, my 16-year-old daughter who'd apparently inherited her mother's organizational skills and my electrical precision. She'd created a digital evidence archive that would make the NSA weep with envy. "Dad, check this out," she said, pulling up her laptop like a general briefing troops. "I've mapped every harassment incident against demographic data, property values, and social media activity. Brenda targets families within 2 weeks of posting about cultural celebrations or home improvements." The kid had basically created a federal hate crime algorithm. I felt proud enough to burst, watching my daughter dismantle a criminal enterprise with spreadsheets and teenage determination. While our legal dream team assembled evidence, I focused on the technical trap that would nail Brenda if she tried stealing again. My replacement charging cable looked identical to the original, except this beauty had more surveillance tech than a CIA safe house. "GPS tracking, cellular connectivity, current monitoring, and automatic police alerts," I explained, holding up the cable like a trophy. "If Princess Brenda touches this thing, half the police department will know her exact location within 60 seconds. The rough texture of high-tech surveillance equipment felt satisfying under my fingers. Sometimes the best revenge is giving your enemy exactly what they want and watching them destroy themselves, taking it. Mrs. Chen had been playing legal chess while the rest of us were still learning checkers. She'd filed court orders freezing every asset Brenda owned, from bank accounts to shell company properties. She can't move money, destroy evidence, or transfer ownership without committing fresh federal crimes. How long can you keep her frozen? Until hell freezes over, Mrs. Chen smiled like a shark smelling blood. Federal asset freezes are basically legal quicksand. The harder she struggles, the deeper she sinks. Jake's media strategy was pure psychological warfare. 3-part series designed for maximum emotional impact. Harassment victims first to build sympathy, financial fraud second to generate outrage, federal arrests third to deliver justice. "By the time we're done," Jake grinned, "Brenda's going to be more famous than she ever wanted. National poster child for HOA corruption." The community mobilization was beautiful to watch. Maria Rodriguez had organized every victim into a coordinated evidence-gathering operation. The warm smell of homemade tamales filled my garage as neighbors who'd been isolated for years finally worked together. "We're not just fighting one racist," Maria announced to the room. "We're proving that communities can fight back against systematic oppression." Mrs. Chen's psychological preparation was sobering but necessary. "Cornered narcissists become extremely dangerous," she warned. "Expect vandalism, false police reports, maybe physical violence. Never confront her alone." I'd already turned my house into Fort Knox, motion sensors, upgraded alarms, and enough security cameras to make paranoids jealous. The soft blue glow of LED indicators now covered every angle of my property. But our secret weapon was timing. HOA election meeting. Saturday, 2 p.m. Jake's expose series would publish Friday morning, giving residents exactly 24 hours to digest the scope of Brenda's crimes. before facing her in person. "Here's what's going to happen," I told the assembled team, feeling like a general before battle. Friday morning, Brenda wakes up to see her crimes on the front page. Friday afternoon, federal agents start asking questions. Saturday afternoon, she faces a room full of people who know exactly what she's stolen from them. Zoe looked up from her laptop. "Dad, that's not justice. That's beautiful." Friday morning, Jake's expose hit Willowbrook Estates like a legal earthquake, with aftershocks measured in ruined reputations. HOA president accused of running multi-million-dollar ethnic cleansing scheme screamed from every doorstep, and the neighborhood erupted into glorious chaos. The acrid smell of burned coffee-filled kitchens as residents read about their neighbor's criminal empire over breakfast. My phone rang so constantly I thought it was broken. Neighbors apologizing, sharing horror stories, or just confirming that yes, the Tesla-driving sociopath had finally been exposed. But Brenda's reaction wasn't shame or remorse. It was pure, crystalline panic, mixed with the kind of desperation that makes criminals do spectacularly stupid things. First, she tried canceling the election meeting, called every board member claiming terrorist threats and neighborhood safety concerns. When that failed, she attempted moving the vote to her house. Because nothing says democracy like forcing constituents to vote in your living room under your Tesla's intimidating gaze, Tom Valdez called with updates that made my day brighter than a short circuit. "She's been harassing City Hall since dawn," he laughed, "demanding emergency inspections of your property for unlicensed surveillance operations because you have security cameras." "On my own property?" According to Princess Brenda, recording public areas constitutes electronic stalking and invasion of privacy. She wants you arrested for documenting her crimes. The irony was so thick you could insulate a house with it. A woman running criminal surveillance was complaining about legal security cameras. Wednesday afternoon brought escalation that crossed into federal stupidity. Someone called the fire department reporting suspicious electrical odors from my garage. 3 trucks arrived, sirens wailing, ready to battle a fire that existed only in Brenda's increasingly delusional mind. The rough texture of fire hoses being deployed felt oddly satisfying as firefighters examined my perfectly legal workshop. "Cleanest electrical work I've seen in decades," the chief told me. Whoever reported this was either hallucinating or filing false emergency reports. Thursday brought witness intimidation disguised as real estate advice. Brenda's cronies started making friendly visits to neighbors who'd talked to Jake Morrison. Not technically threatening, just casually mentioning how negative publicity might affect property values and how certain residents might want to relocate before things get complicated. The soft click of Maria Rodriguez's phone recording captured the money shot when Brenda's associates suggested she'd be more comfortable in a culturally appropriate neighborhood. Federal prosecutors call that witness tampering with a hate crime enhancement. But Brenda's masterstroke of criminal genius came Thursday night. Motion sensors detected movement at 2 a.m. Our HOA president skulking across my lawn like a discount ninja, bolt cutters gleaming under streetlights. She was targeting my replacement cable, the one loaded with more surveillance tech than a CIA safe house. I watched through my phone as she approached the outlet, checked my house for lights, then raised those bolt cutters like a ceremonial sword. The moment metal touched copper, my security system exploded into action. GPS tracking activated. Police alerts transmitted. Current monitoring confirmed theft in progress. Motion floods, full daylight mode engaged. Brenda froze in the blazing lights like a vampire caught at sunrise, staring directly into my camera while clutching stolen federal evidence. Any rational criminal would drop everything and run. Instead, she smiled. Not a panicked grimace or embarrassed expression. A cold, calculated smile that said, "I know exactly what I'm doing and I don't care who's watching." She dragged my cable to her garage with the confidence of someone who'd been getting away with crimes for years. That smile was her fatal mistake. Proof of premeditation, repeat offense intent, and complete disregard for law enforcement. But here's the mini twist that made everything perfect. While Brenda was busy stealing my cable, Mrs. Chen was executing a parallel operation. She'd spent the evening serving legal papers on every shell company, freezing every bank account, and filing emergency injunctions that would make Brenda's morning very interesting. Police arrived following GPS signals that led straight to Brenda's garage, where they found her Tesla plugged into my stolen cable. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the neighborhood like a symphony of justice. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said, "you're under arrest for grand theft, breaking and entering in violation of federal surveillance orders. You have the right to remain silent, which, given the evidence, seems like excellent advice." As they loaded our former HOA president into the patrol car, I noticed something beautiful. Neighbors were coming out of their houses, not to gawk, but to cheer. The Patels, Maria Rodriguez, Jessica with her kids, even old Mr. Washington was applauding from his doorstep. Tomorrow's election meeting wasn't going to need a candidate. We were going to need a celebration. Friday morning brought a GPS tracking update that made my electrician's soul practically glow with satisfaction. My stolen cable wasn't just sitting in Brenda's garage, it was actively charging her Tesla, stealing electricity in real time while broadcasting her exact location to half the police departments in the state. But our dethroned HOA empress wasn't surrendering her criminal empire without a fight. Brenda was about to demonstrate that cornered sociopaths don't just burn bridges, they napalm entire civilizations. Her opening salvo was hiring Harold Pemberton III, the kind of criminal defense attorney who charges more per hour than most people make in a month. By noon, he was holding a press conference on Brenda's front lawn, his silver hair gleaming like polished chrome as he spun lies with the confidence of a politician. "My client is the victim of a coordinated character assassination," Pemberton declared, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd defended mob bosses and corrupt politicians. "These false accusations represent a dangerous precedent where effective community leadership is criminalized by disgruntled residents." The acrid smell of pure bullshit was so overwhelming I could taste it through my television screen. Jake Morrison was live tweeting from across the street. Watching someone claim that documented federal crimes are character assassination is like watching flat earthers explain gravity. But Brenda's strategy wasn't just denial, it was mutually assured destruction, designed to take down everyone who'd exposed her criminal operation. Friday afternoon brought a lawsuit that could only be described as weapons-grade legal insanity. Brenda was suing me, Mrs. Chen, Tom Valdez, Jake Morrison, and somehow even my daughter, Zoe, for conspiracy to commit defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and the crown jewel of irony, racketeering through coordinated harassment. The woman who'd been running an actual racketeering operation was accusing us of racketeering for documenting her racketeering. The cognitive dissonance could power a small city. Friday evening brought desperate evidence destruction that would make Nixon proud. Multiple security cameras captured Brenda making trips to her garage with boxes of documents, feeding papers into what sounded like an industrial shredder. The mechanical whir of destruction echoed through the neighborhood, as 3 years of criminal documentation became expensive confetti. Unfortunately for our former dictator, destroying evidence during a federal investigation is like pouring gasoline on a fire. It just makes everything burn brighter and hotter. Mrs. Chen called with an update that made my weekend perfect. Federal marshals just executed asset seizure warrants on everything Brenda owns. They're treating this as full RICO prosecution, organized crime, money laundering, civil rights conspiracy. How much damage are we talking? $12.7 million in frozen assets. Every house, every bank account, every luxury handbag. She's officially more broke than a college student and facing more federal charges than a mafia. Saturday morning delivered Brenda's final masterstroke of criminal stupidity. Security footage showed her loading her Tesla with suitcases, cash bundles, and what looked suspiciously like emergency travel documents. Our HOA princess was attempting to flee the country. The beautiful irony? My stolen charging cable was still plugged into her car, broadcasting her location with the precision of a GPS ankle monitor. State police intercepted her 40 miles outside town, following coordinates that led them straight to a federal fugitive carrying enough cash to fund a small revolution. The rough texture of highway asphalt probably felt educational as they arrested her for flight to avoid prosecution. But here's the mini twist that transformed everything from satisfying to absolutely perfect. While Brenda was being cuffed on Interstate 85, federal agents were executing simultaneous search warrants on all her properties. What they found in her home office safe made prosecutors literally applaud. Hidden behind her real estate awards, detailed spreadsheets tracking harassment campaigns organized by racial demographics, target acquisition lists ranking families by deportation probability and cultural assimilation resistance, financial projections for neighborhood improvement through strategic demographic enforcement. She'd created a systematic ethnic cleansing business plan, complete with profit margins, success metrics, and expansion strategies for other communities. The soft rustle of evidence bags being sealed was the most beautiful sound I'd heard since my divorce papers. Every racist calculation, every fraudulent scheme, every federal crime documented in her own meticulous handwriting. By Saturday afternoon, federal prosecutors had enough evidence to charge Brenda with crimes spanning 4 different agencies: FBI for racketeering, EPA for environmental fraud, HUD for civil rights violations, and IRS for tax evasion. As I stood watching federal agents load bankers' boxes from Brenda's mansion, the sweet smell of justice mixed with afternoon air. Neighbors were gathering outside the community center, not for an election, but for celebration. We didn't need to campaign for a new HOA president. We needed to plan how to rebuild a community that one woman's greed had systematically destroyed. The electrical system was finally properly grounded. Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. The community center was packed like a stadium during the World Series. 49 of 52 households crammed into a space designed for 30. The thick aroma of nervous sweat mixed with Jessica's stress-baked cookies as residents who'd been living in fear for years finally gathered to witness their oppressor's downfall. Jake Morrison had positioned his camera crew like he was filming a documentary about revolution. Tom Valdez stood against the back wall, wearing his city inspector badge like military ribbons. Mrs. Chen sat front and center with a briefcase that contained enough federal evidence to topple governments. The guest of honor was notably absent. Brenda Fitzpatrick was currently enjoying orange jumpsuit couture at the county jail, where her Tesla's intimidation factor had been replaced by the musical charm of slamming cell doors. I stood before the packed room, feeling the electric tension of 3 months' worth of rage about to find its outlet. The soft murmur of conversation died, like someone had pulled a power switch, as 49 households prepared to hear truths that would change everything. 3 months ago, someone stole my charging cable, I began, my voice carrying across the silent room. Today, we're here to discuss how that theft exposed a $13 million criminal enterprise that has been systematically destroying our community. The projector's blue glow illuminated faces, as GPS tracking data showed my cable's journey from driveway to garage to Tesla. Real-time evidence of grand theft that had been broadcasting Brenda's location like a criminal GPS ankle monitor. But this was never about a cable, I continued, clicking to financial records that made several people gasp audibly. This was about a woman who turned harassment into a business model. Mrs. Chen rose like a federal prosecutor approaching the Supreme Court. Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 30 years putting criminals behind bars. What you're about to see, she announced, opening her briefcase with ceremonial precision, is the most systematic civil rights violation I've encountered in 3 decades of federal prosecution. The room temperature seemed to drop as she displayed Brenda's harassment statistics. 89% of complaints targeting non-white residents, 47 families driven from their homes, 0 legitimate violations found in any targeted property. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Chen's voice rose like thunder. You didn't just have a bad neighbor. You were victims of organized ethnic cleansing disguised as HOA enforcement. The sharp intake of breath from 49 people created a sound like wind rushing through broken windows. Maria Rodriguez stood up, her hands shaking with 3 years of suppressed fury. She tried to steal our children's home with fake papers. Maria's voice cracked, then strengthened like steel being forged. She called immigration on citizens. She turned our paradise into a prison because we had the audacity to exist while not being white. Mr. Patel rose with the dignity of someone who'd survived real oppression, his elderly voice carrying across the room like a judge delivering verdict. 20 years we have called this place home. One woman's hatred nearly stole that from us, but hatred did not win. The metallic taste of justice filled the air as neighbor after neighbor stood to share their stories. Each testimony was another nail in Brenda's legal coffin, another federal charge adding years to her eventual sentence. But the nuclear moment came when Mrs. Chen revealed what federal agents had found in Brenda's private safe. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow reached every corner of the room, Brenda Fitzpatrick kept detailed records of her crimes. The projector displayed spreadsheets that made genocide look organized, harassment campaigns categorized by racial demographics, property acquisition targets ranked by deportation probability, financial projections for neighborhood purification through strategic enforcement. The silence was so complete you could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead. 49 people staring at documented proof that their neighbor had been running a systematically racist criminal enterprise for profit. Then Jake Morrison stepped forward with his microphone, delivering the final blow like a war correspondent announcing victory. "Federal prosecutors are treating this as the largest HOA racketeering case in American history," he announced. "RICO conspiracy, civil rights violations, environmental fraud, tax evasion. Brenda Fitzpatrick is facing life in federal prison without possibility of parole." The explosion of applause that followed could have powered the entire neighborhood, the sound of pure justice mixed with the primal roar of people who'd been afraid for years, finally breathing free. But I wasn't finished. Standing before my neighbors, feeling the electrical satisfaction of a perfect circuit finally completing, I delivered the mic drop moment that would end up quoted in every news story about our case. "Brenda thought she could steal our community one charging cable at a time," I said, my voice carrying over the cheers. "Instead, she handed us the evidence to steal her freedom, one federal charge at a time." The standing ovation that followed shook the building's foundation. Justice wasn't just served, it was electrified. 6 months later, watching Brenda Fitzpatrick shuffle into federal court wearing an orange jumpsuit felt like watching electricity finally flow through a properly grounded circuit. Judge Patterson's gavel echoed through the courtroom like thunder as he delivered her sentence. 25 years federal prison, $4,800,000, 0 cents restitution, and a lifetime ban from any community leadership role. "Mrs. Fitzpatrick," the judge said, his voice carrying constitutional weight, "your systematic campaign of ethnic cleansing disguised as civic duty represents a betrayal of everything American communities stand for. You didn't just commit crimes, you attacked the soul of democracy itself." The sweet taste of justice mixed with courtroom tension as 47 families watched their tormentor finally face consequences. Jake Morrison's Pulitzer-winning exposé had turned our neighborhood fight into a national movement, inspiring similar investigations in 12 states. But the real transformation happened at home, where a community systematically divided by hatred was rebuilding itself as something unprecedented, a true democracy. The civil settlement provided $2,300,000, 0 cents for affected families, but we made a decision that would have made Brenda's head explode. We pooled every penny into community improvement. Because the best revenge isn't personal enrichment, it's proving that diversity creates prosperity. Our first project was the solar-powered EV charging station at the community center, free for all residents and powered by clean energy that would make environmentalists weep with joy. The gentle hum of cars charging became our community's healing soundtrack, replacing the toxic silence that fear had created. Zoe, my daughter who'd helped expose Brenda's crimes with teenage precision, won the National Civil Rights Essay Competition. Her piece, How a Stolen Charging Cable Exposed American Fascism, earned her early admission to Harvard Law School with full scholarship funding. "Dad," she told me during one of our weekend electrical workshops, "you didn't just get your property back. You taught me that ordinary people can rewire systems that seem too powerful to change." The rough texture of electrical wire felt different in my hands now, not just copper and insulation, but possibility and connection. Teaching Zoe to wire circuits became teaching her to wire communities. Mrs. Chen transformed her retirement into a civil rights empire, establishing the Willowbrook Legal Defense Fund that provides free legal services to communities fighting systematic harassment. Her home office became mission control for a network spanning 37 states. "Marcus," she smiled during our monthly strategy meetings, "Brenda weaponized law against vulnerable people. We've turned law into armor for justice." The Rodriguez family bought Brenda's foreclosed mansion at auction, transforming her monument to hatred into the Willowbrook Cultural Center. The rich aroma of Maria's cooking classes now fills spaces where racist scheming once festered, proving that love grows strongest in soil cleared of toxic weeds. Tom Valdez's promotion to chief building inspector created a revolution in municipal enforcement. His pattern recognition protocol for identifying systematic harassment has been adopted nationwide, creating an early warning system against future neighborhood dictators. But the deepest transformation was personal. My relationship with Zoe strengthened through shared activism. My connection with neighbors evolved from fearful isolation to genuine friendship. Even my dating life improved. Turns out Jessica finds guys who fight fascism surprisingly attractive. Standing in the community garden that now blooms where Brenda's house once cast shadows, watching the Patels teach children traditional dances while Mr. Washington shows teenagers how to change oil, I realized something profound. We hadn't just defeated one criminal, we created a template for democracy. The annual Willowbrook Unity Festival has become a pilgrimage site for communities fighting systematic oppression. This year's event raised $200,000 0 cents for the Charging Cable Scholarship Fund, because sometimes the smallest stolen thing can power the biggest change. The sound of children laughing in languages Brenda tried to silence fills air where fear once lived. The smell of diverse cooking mingles with workshop sawdust as neighbors build both furniture and friendship. The texture of community feels different when it's chosen rather than enforced. "What's your neighborhood nightmare?" I asked, looking into Jake's documentary camera. Share your HOA horror story in the comments, because if systematic harassment is poisoning your community, you don't have to fight alone. Remember, document everything, build coalitions, and never forget that justice isn't about winning. It's about wiring communities for connection instead of control. Subscribe if you believe regular people can short-circuit systematic oppression, because next week I'm telling you about the city councilman who tried to steal our solar panels and how we turned his corruption into clean energy for everyone. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge is building something that makes hatred impossible.